Once again, good morning. I want to thank the Calvert County Minority Business Alliance for having me. Of course, Mr. Joel Hill, thank you so much for the invitation. Obviously, as we know, this is a very new and uncertain time as we adjust to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, what I want to talk about is essentially how your brand can hopefully thrive post-COVID-19. But in particular, I want to really focus on the brand's foundation, then talking about creating a call to action, monetizing your brand, business to business and business to direct to consumer, and then also, of course, monetizing your brand, business to government. Then we'll do, believe we'll have some Q&A, and then we'll turn it back to Joel Hill. So as Joel said, I own a consulting firm. I've been in business about 15 years. My clients are government agencies like Department of Defense, Treasury, Commerce, Baltimore County government. We also have clients like Johns Hopkins University and Goldman Sachs, and a large number of large and medium-sized nonprofit organizations, other universities. We also do work in Kenya and also in India. So, and mainly what we provide are management technology solutions. So I'm an operations guy. And so when we work with an organization and we're creating their marketing strategy and we're talking about their branding, obviously very, very important. But as we know, if you don't have the infrastructure to back it up, your customers won't stay with you very long. So my focus today will really be on, once you define your brand, how do you make money? How do you create the structure so that you can have a thriving, successful brand? That's my area of expertise, and that's what I'll focus on. So obviously, COVID-19 has been devastating economically and also to the health of thousands of people. But if we're in business, we must adjust. And so what I want to talk about today is your brand strong enough to thrive in the new normal? One thing I've realized, especially at being a business consultant working in operations, that like when I walk into an organization and there's chaos, that's actually an opportunity for me. Because if there's chaos, that means that there needs to be things put in place to make things run smoothly. And we have to adjust. So when we look at the changes we're going to have to make, or that will be made because of COVID-19 and what it's done to the economy and what it's done to businesses across the United States, we have to look for the opportunity that's more than likely, in fact, it's already starting to happen. First, we can expect new health and safety considerations, new regulations, policies and procedures, new certifications and requirements, new training programs and new technology, new customer needs and revamping of old ideas. New RFPs they're already coming out. New contract opportunities in the public sector. New products and services. New ways to brand and redefine your business. Now on your brand, of course, sits on top, and we've talked about that over the last 40 minutes. So I'm not going to go back over that. I think that the speakers prior, gave some great examples and gave you some good information on how to consider building your brand. Where I really focus on is once you've decided the story you want to tell and the brand you want to project to the world, it's very, very important that you don't forget these things. That, of course, your brand, it sits on top of your story. And Joel Hill, I think, gave a great example and really tied it together on how, from a young man, he had these certain ideals, and then now as a business person, he ensures that things are done properly in businesses. That makes sense. It all ties together. Does your story do that? You should be, and if not, think about how you can make that happen. In particular, if you service multiple clients and maybe even different industries, often businesses have trouble figuring out what's that umbrella. how do I really put together that I service government and universities and nonprofit organizations? What's that umbrella to really, that I can really build a brand that ties all that together so that people don't think I'm just doing anything and trying to grab at any kind of business I can get. Obviously, that's not what you want to project. So building your story, creating your reputation, and not just creating it over, before you start your business. Of course, during the time that you're in business, how do you maintain that? And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. Of course, knowing your customers' needs, that's very important. In fact, that one of the biggest challenges I have when I work with organizations sometimes is getting them to get past their ego, getting them to get past what they want to do, and really focusing on their customers' needs. And now with COVID-19, your business is going to change. And I think that people think, oh, well, once this is over, we'll get back to doing it the way we were. Well, no, we won't. Things are going to change with thousands of people dying, and with hundreds of thousands of people being put out of work. I'm certain that we'll see some regulations put in place on the federal, state, and local level. So, of course, when it comes to health and safety, you can expect some things are going to change. I mean, we should expect some things will change. So these create needs for your customer where they have to adjust, and you have to adjust to ensure that you are, of course, keeping them safe and you're doing things to protect your organization. But your customers' needs should come first as you build your brand. Your channels and voice. I think Pam talked about earlier on. Your customer, they look for information on certain channels, whether if it's Google ads or whether if it's Facebook or social media. It may be that they look on billboards when they're driving into the city every day, or maybe it's through the business journal or newspapers or what have you, or maybe it's through their friends and family, and they ask, who do you know that can help me with this? So you should be where your customers are looking, and you should place your brand where they're looking, so that when they're looking for the information, they find you over and over and over again. And that frequency and consistency is essential to staying top of mind for your customer, even if they're not ready to buy yet. And this is whether if it's business to government, direct to customer, you need to stay top of mind so that when they do think of, wait a second, I have a need, or someone says to me, I have a need, your brand comes up in their mind first. Also, I talked about your voice. So, Pam and then Joel talked about the adjectives that they use to describe their business. Where I take it a step further when I work with an organization is whether they use adjectives or nouns, it helps them to really identify the kind of information that they post. For example, on my social media, I only really post things that really fall into three categories: father, leader, businessman. As chairman of the board for the Chamber of Commerce, I talk about that. I talk about my work with Goldman Sachs, I talk about my work with DOD or Commerce or Treasury. All those kinds of posts and those updates and win a new award or whatever, that falls in that businessman category. Leader, do other things in the community, whether if it's giving back or mentoring or whatever. And then father, I'm very proud of being a dad, and I talk about that a lot. And I think, but also all those things, what they do is they create trust with my potential customers, they continue trust with my existing customers, and it helps people. So when I go places, usually, at least up here in Baltimore, where most of my business is done, when I go into a place, most people already know who I am. And that's really the best, I think, situation you can create as you network and you build your brand in a certain targeted area. So whether your customer already knows who you are when you walk in, it really takes a lot of the selling out of it because they already trust you. Next, your target customer's experience. You have to cultivate that, and you have to make sure that, of course, that your processes and procedures enforce a strong customer experience. And that comes from the time that they learn about you to that first call, that first email. Absolutely essential. I'm going to talk about how you can ensure that in a little bit. Next, your implementation of processes and procedures. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We'll talk about that more in a bit. Your adherence to local, state, and federal regulations. I can almost promise you, in fact, I've already heard talk as far as the types of changes that are going to be happening. And so you should be looking for those. One, so you can, of course, make changes for you and your customer as needed, but also there are opportunities there. Like, for example, here in Maryland, there's a grants that are given for people who are in times. So if it's an event, maybe you have an event or you go to an event, maybe it's through social media, maybe it's through online search or search engine optimization, maybe you put out an email campaign, maybe it's YouTube or online or radio or other videos or TV ads, or even through a referral. All that energy, all those interactions should push somewhere. So depending on your business's setup, often, especially now, because we have websites and most of it's digital as far as interactions, whether it's mobile or via PC, people are usually going to some kind of landing page. So a landing page is usually a page on your website that's dedicated to that idea. So it's not your home page per se, unless they do a search online, but you created some kind of marketing out there, you created some kind of call to action. They're going to probably go to a dedicated page on your website that it talks about that thing. You don't want to send them to your home page because then they could get lost. They may not know where to go. You want to send them to one direct place that's in relation to that campaign, that idea, that offering. Or maybe you're directing them to your blog, or maybe it's, wherever you're directing them, it should go to a place that then pushes them to a property that you own online. So if it's a web page, a landing page, your social media, what have you, but then you want to be able to be more effective about getting their information. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 people come to your site in a day if you don't know who they are. If you're not able to get their information, you're not able to keep all that energy and money you put out building this brand and doing marketing, and then you don't know who came to your site. So of course you should have things like analytics to really be able to tell how many people came, where they came from, what ads are working. So tools like Google Analytics, that's been around a long time. Most people seem to know about that now, but there are other tools out there that work in conjunction with your social media data. All these things allow you to really understand the effectiveness of your branding and your marketing. It's very important because, and here's why. Let's say you think that your brand is going to be effective if you let's say you use yellow and gray as your colors, and you put it on social media, and you do funny videos on TikTok or whatever, and then without any type of way of measuring the effectiveness, and you don't get any sales, you don't even know if people are even clicking, you don't know if people are interested at all. You keep putting money into that, not really knowing, without any metrics, you're going to run out of money and probably not get any sales. So if you're able to drive them to a place where you can actually measure the effectiveness of your marketing and branding, where you can get their information, where you can give them payment options, or drive them to a newsletter where you can get their email address or get more information about them, have contact forms, have downloads, or maybe they put their email in order to get a download, share buttons where they can share it with their friends, a blog where they can read more about you, watch your videos, learn more about your story, events where they can come and they can interact with you directly, videos where they can really get like a free taste of what you do. All these things help to increase the probability that all that branding and marketing you're doing is going to actually turn into a customer, which is what this is all about. Then, of course, driving them to those forms, that information, whether they talk to someone or they're putting it in themselves, goes into your CRM where you save all this information. That way your team can look at it. If they convert right away to an online payment, great, they become a customer, and then that money goes into your bank account. But in most cases, it takes a little bit of time of marketing to them, remarketing, retargeting, contacting them, sending them information to get them to turn into a customer. Then once they turn, we fulfill that order, that pushes right back out, everything's updated in the CRM, online payment happens, and then once again, turns into money in your bank. You have to ensure that your marketing tools support your call to action in order for you to get paid. It's just very, very important. All the branding you want to do, great, but you've got to have something behind it so that you can turn that energy into money. A lot of us do business to government, so I wanted to And that's a different animal, as we know. I want to make sure that you're thinking about these things. And also, please know, I mean, as you guys already know, I'm sure, contracting officers, they Google you, they look online, they look at your website. So all these things still come into play, but I want you to really think about these things in particular, in addition to what I mentioned earlier. Who is your real customer? What agencies are you going after? Not just everybody, right? It should be certain agencies, and your message should be appropriate for them. Or if it's not an agency, are you really, maybe you want to market to a prime and put your brand in front of a prime so you can do some subcontract work. I always recommend you should be thinking about your 5-year story, not just what you've done in the past, but who do you want to be? Do you want to be the go-to for DOD? You want to be the go-to for Treasury? You want to be the go-to for HHS or whatever? How are you going to do that? What kind of, you have to have past performance. So you have to make sure when you create your bid no bid process, you're thinking about what agencies you go after and the branding you're going to put in front of them when you're, and that's of course, part of that is your marketing material, when you list out your past performance, all of your statements of your qualifications, all those things, they should look good. They should be branded properly so it shows. Your capability statement, all those things should really work together, and it should really help tell a story so I want you to think 5 years from now, what do we want our company to be known as? Okay, well, those guys are the go-to for DOD when it comes to this thing, or they're the go-to for SBA when it comes to this thing. Building your brand and then building the past performance and the work behind it, all those things tie in together. Next, you should be thinking about when you're not there to present in person. Maybe they're not, they can't see your video, they can't go to your website, or maybe hopefully you had a champion inside that office and they're taking your information and they're going to describe it for you. But what does your proposal look like? Your quad charts, your conference posters, your brochures, your capability statements. Do they really convey what you can do? Are they properly branded? Does it show that you're a company they should get to know and hopefully like and trust? Next, you should be thinking about your solutions. No matter how complex they are, you have to explain things in a very simple way. You may have to talk to a number of people before you get to a technical expert, or even the technical expert may not even be the decision maker in most cases, especially on government contracts. So you have to be able to explain things in a very simple way. So an example is, and this is very common, so I'll take like a microwave, for example, right? So you go to buy a microwave in a store, you don't go in there and say, hey, I'm really looking for something that will speed up the molecules of food at such a high rate that it causes heat to occur. I mean, you don't explain a microwave like that. You say, hey, I want something that'll heat up my food fast so I can feed my family. Now, of course, microwaves are old technology at this point, so we just go in and ask for a microwave. But my point is that the customer is not asking for the complicated solution. They're asking for something very simple to meet their needs. So when you talk to your government representative, whether not their level of experience, your branding and your message should be very, really clear and simple so that they can understand it. And when you get to a person that's technical, then you switch it up and you can dive deep. Just always remember, you may have to explain your solution several times to gatekeepers before you get to decision makers and people who really understand. But all this ties into you having a strong brand that's easy to understand and it makes people do something.